You're listening to the Smith House Adventure Show.
Now what am I going to do? I go up to Alberta, where I'm living in a little cabin, and we had about 11 days of sustained minus 40. And like, it was rough, man. Like the trucks wouldn't start, couldn't go to town. We're eating canned food. You know, it was pretty rough. And I got a call from this anti-poaching outfit that I had kind of expressed a bit of interest in it through a third party who was maybe going to go do that. And they needed a guy, and they called a few. They referenced me. I never applied for this job. Like, they referenced me through some people who knew me through the Special Operations Forces like network in Australia, and I got asked if I would go to South Sudan.
Crazy. So, and you had never gone to Africa beforehand, so now you're just like, I'm going to go check out the South Sudan. What was that like?
So I did something really stupid before I went. Actually, I did a number of really stupid things before I went. The first stupid thing that I did was I didn't prepare myself physically. Like, I had been out for 4 years. I'm like, whatever, man, I'm a guide. I climb mountains. I can do this. It is not the same. Like, climbing mountains and guiding sheep it's hunting. So you're moving as fast as you can observe your space to pursue a quarry, right? Which is, hey, that's like patrolling, right? But there's elements of my personal physical fitness that I did not sort out before I went there. And I paid for the first while I was there, man. Because I went from minus 40 in Alberta to like plus 45 plus humidity in like the sub-Saharan savannah. And again, it was something else.
Oh, yeah, that would be your body just going, what the fuck did you just do to me? Like, yeah. Oh, man. Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly. Like, I turned 34. I'm standing in the shower. Sorry, 39. I'm standing in the shower on my 39th birthday. This is before I knew Sudan was coming up. And I'm like, I have a year to do anything I want to before I can roll into 40 looking like whatever I want. I can lose a bunch of weight. I could go to school. I could do a bunch of savings. I could buy a home. Like, I have 1 year to roll into 40, making it look like whatever I want. And I didn't choose at that time. I'm just like, I'm going to just work really hard at a couple of things that I really enjoy and see what happens, which is not direct. That's not a smart goal. But when I got to Africa, I started losing a bunch of weight. I had a heart attack the other week too. Actually, I had a heart attack. What day is it? 4 days ago. I had a heart attack 4 days ago.
Jesus.
And yeah. So I'm 39 years old. I got malaria, Rocky Mountain spotted fever in Oklahoma, and a heart attack in the same year. And I'm like, okay, like maybe God's trying to tell me something. But Africa was something else, man. So I got to go over there with the not so fit body of a younger soldier that I enjoyed when I was an operator. But I went over there with 39 years of wisdom and a solid know-how grasp of the human condition, what it's like to be around these poor people, an idea of what motivates them. And I get the privilege to train and lead these men operationally to protect their country, a national park, and the wild animals that exist in it, that enjoys the single largest mammal migration on the planet is in South Sudan. And it's not the Serengeti. It's 4 times larger than the Serengeti migration. I remember being in a bush plane and flying over herds of animals for tens of minutes, and you couldn't see the grass. It was thick with animals. There's millions and millions of animals during that season.
That's crazy.
And it's absolutely wild. And it's not to war and fight and kill people. It's enforcing the law. And we didn't have to shoot anybody. You know, the objective was not to get in a gunfight. And I got to work with some awesome guys that are equally as passionate about it from the tier 1 community across the globe, the tier 1 and 2 community across the globe. I work with an Aussie guy who, him and I are still friends. We suffer from similar proclivities. And yeah, he's just like, I just made a bunch of buddies and I got to experience something really, really wild. And it's, with any luck, I get to go back in February to Zambia and work for that same company. This is an Australian company based out of Cape Town, South Africa, which was another dope spot. Like, I spent just a day in Cape Town and then landed in Ethiopia for a night in Addis Ababa. And that was like, that's a wild, people think like Ethiopia, it's actually incredibly metropolitan, like especially the capital. It's gorgeous. And I felt very safe. And I mean, my feeling of safe is very relative. I get that. Like there are women, young women in this country that don't feel safe walking from their residence to the library on their college campus. And I can walk down. So I get that. But yeah. And then I land in South Sudan on a bush plane at this park, and I step off wearing Wrangler jeans that I've starched so they look good. They're ironed, and actually this shirt and a cowboy wild rag and my cowboy hat. And I step off, and I remember like the looks I was getting, dressed like a Western mountain cowboy in like the airport in Ethiopia. It was kind of wild, but yeah, it's part of who I am, and it's part of what I do, and yeah, the anti-poaching thing was great. I got a few really great experiences to live through some things that bothered me about my time in service with the wisdom to live them right this time, if that makes any sense. One of the examples I think of is had a friend named Drew from the regiment killed the day before my birthday in 2015. And I remember helping one of the guys unpack Drew's equipment when his warfighting gear was repatriated back to Petawawa. And I remember opening up a Ziploc bag that had his Garmin Fortrex that had blood on it and a bullet hole in it. And I was peeling back the bag that was sticky from his blood. And that messed me up for years. I had one of my Rangers injured, not severely, but I was first on scene. I would normally roll with a group of about 25 guys, 25 local park rangers that we trained up, and they were very good. I think they're very good soldiers. Not soldiers. They enforce the law of the Rangers. And the GPS that was on his equipment was damaged in this fall. My job on that ground force for that operation was as the 2IC. So I'm making sure after this critical incident that all his weapons and all the injured parties' weapons and gear is sorted out. And I remember we're putting it in buckets back at the hangar, and I'm accounting for all of it and writing it down in my notebook to make sure I could tell the boss and the client that, like, yes, we have all the critical equipment that is back, and our guys are on the way to the hospital. They don't have any bombs or firearms or anything on their person. Not bombs. They didn't have bombs. They just had firearms and no ammo. I remember holding Benson was his Ranger's name. His GPS that had a big crack in it. I was brought back to that moment where I held Drew's busted GPS. And I was like, I was able to link these two experiences, detach from the emotion through years of therapy and talking to doctors and my own self work, that I could be like, I did everything I could today, and this was out of my control, and he's going to be fine, and I've accounted for all this stuff. And this is very similar to the experience I had with Drew's gear, but I'm in a much better place in my life to live this moment and put both of them to bed. And instances like that, I had a handful of them. And it was actually a very healing trip for me. It was hard. I lost a bunch of weight. I got sick. Like, I worked harder than I wanted to. It was tough, but it was a very healing trip for me to go and do that.
That's awesome. And I mean, again, I think it's like you said earlier, where if you keep running from everything, you'll never be able to solve it. But you were able to take a moment that was happening currently, link it to another one, and bring some closure to that and help with the healing.
Yep.
And I think some people are just too scared to bring up those old emotions and try and get through them and stuff like that. And then that's where substance abuse and other things, because you can't get through it, just forget about it with a bottle. Yeah, that's an amazing thing how you were able to transition those into a new stage, a new kind of thought process. Yeah. It's kind of like the psychology behind it is very similar to EMDR, where you are reliving a moment through a memory while you're bilaterally stimulating your parts of your brain, and then you're detaching the narrative that you had previously associated to it and putting a much more logical, non-emotionally attached narrative to it.
And so I didn't even realize that I did this for the GPS thing. It was only during a couple medical appointments that I was able to do that. They were like, "Oh, do you know what you just did?" And I was like, "I have no idea." But they were able to coach me through, like, kind of explain to me why it was that incident was good, and how the tools in the toolbox that I've accumulated over 12 years in therapy, I was able to put to use at a critical moment, so that I can put those things, like I said, put those to bed and be okay with it.
Thanks for your time. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help grow the show. And remember, get back up.